Welcome to Talking Who, the internet's only live video internet blog for fans of Doctor Who, coming to you live with the latest news about your favourite TV show and reviews of the latest episodes and latest DVDs. This is Elisar Cabrera.
Hello.
And I'm Sean Harry, and we're going to be spending the next hour talking about nothing and everything to do with Doctor Who.
Indeed we are.
Yes.
You can tweet us at Talking Who with your comments. Really like to hear from you on the news of the day, really, which is Doctor Who Confidential. So start tweeting in, start writing in the chat room. If you're just watching on Ustream, sign up for an account at Ustream, and then you can actually log into the chat room and actually take part and interact with us live in the studio.
Yes. So we've got message boards. We're on YouTube. We're on Ustream. We've got a message board on each. If you've got any opinions, if you want to shout anything out, just go straight in there. We'll repeat it on the show. We'll answer your questions. We'll voice your opinions. We're on, as Elisar was saying, we're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Google+. Is anybody on Google? Does anybody use Google+?
We're on YouTube.
I don't know,
subscribe to the channel, Those Video Guys TV.
Got quite a few people already. I'm looking in Ustream. Got quite a few people in Ustream already. We've got Elizabeth Oriana, Best Doctor Who, Gallifrey Times. Where's My Challenger Stayed In?
Barry Aldridge says hello, guys, again.
Hello, Barry.
Hello, Barry, who's watching earlier. Doctor Who Ellis has joined us as well. Hello, Doctor Who Ellis. And Ciplio. Ciplio says, I've been waiting to watch this all week. Well, welcome, Ciplio. Glad you can join us.
I hope we live up to the anticipation and expectation.
Start tweeting your friends. Tell everyone to start joining us. Now's a good time, just before we get into everything.
Now, I suppose the big news this week is the Doctor Who Christmas specials in production.
Doctor Who Christmas specials, and
Yes.
and there's been some set photos from fans.
As
who've actually
always,
seen,
yes.
And the Doctor is in some kind of funky-looking spacesuit.
He's been in a few... no, I don't think Matt Smith has. David Tennant was in a few spacesuits. But yeah, it's an interesting-looking space contraption he has on.
It's the helmet which covers over it. It's all like... It's sort of Barbarella before the visor goes up. Everything's just sort of very round and very 1950s and Pulp Fiction styles.
One of the things about Doctor Who is Doctor Who, in terms of its look, right since the very start, and even now, has always had a bit of a retro, steampunky kind of, you know, it's not like something like Star Trek where everything's got to look modern and clinical. Doctor Who can take the designs from any kind of whatever works.
But obviously what's really interesting in those set photos that some fans have taken is that we know the setting is the 1940s, and there's a photo of them driving in a car there, but it's the spacesuit in the 1940s setting. Yeah. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people trying to work out exactly why he's in a spacesuit in the 1940s.
Well, they'll find out on Christmas Day.
Completely anachronistic to the time period.
Find out in the day. But yeah, very excited for the Christmas special. Apparently, it's going to be even more Christmassy than the last one, if that's possible to believe.
Surely then should be wearing a Santa Claus outfit. Yeah, well, Father Christmas outfit from the UK. That would make it very Christmassy. And I believe the first promotional pictures for the Sarah Jane Adventures. Yes, they've released a photo of the villain. Well, I assume it's the villain. It doesn't look a nice guy to me. That's quite a macho looking. It's kind of Batman futuristic, though, don't you think? Well, I'm looking at that and I'm like, is that an android? Is that battle armor? It's like Batman Beyond or something. Yeah, very interesting. And possibly, is there a new addition to the crew with this character called Sky?
Oh, we'll have to see.
She's in the promotional photos and kind of makes it look like she's part of the lineup. So that's interesting.
Well, they have always changed the kids on the show, you know.
They do, yes, indeed.
So, and the other news is, I mean, you emailed me about this today.
Yes.
Shocking news. Doctor Who Confidential will not be coming back after this season.
And the BBC are blaming cost cutting.
I find this really bizarre. I don't know what other people think, but not to put the show down in any way, but I really don't believe that the BBC are going to be able to produce something for the same or for less that will get anything like the same kind of ratings in that time slot. I mean,
I agree.
What is the show? It's basically a documentary that is done around a show that's already
in production.
They
just send a camera crew.
A camera crew, follow them. You need a camera crew. What? 2 cameramen, a sound guy, an editor, and then you get Anthony Stewart Head in or Simon Pegg to narrate. You know, get somebody cheaper than Anthony Stewart Head or something. We'll narrate it. Come on, we'll narrate Doctor Who Confidential.
I would be happy to.
I'm sexier than
in fact,
Simon
you know what,
Pegg.
BBC, if you want a cheaper version of Doctor Who, we'll do it right here.
I've got a high def camera at home. I've got Adobe Premiere on my laptop to edit it together, and I'll narrate it.
You send the cast. Send us Matt Smith.
Yeah,
Karen Gillan. Right here.
Matt Smith. Send us Karen Gillan.
Right here in the studio.
Karen Gillan. Right here in the studio.
We'll do the Doctor Who confidential interviews right here on Talking to You Live, and it won't cost you a thing, BBC. It'll be free.
I have to say, I'm very surprised because I can only assume that Doctor Who Confidential is not a show that, like with Doctor Who, you can sell around the world, you can't sell it on DVD because it's effectively a DVD.
You give it away as a DVD extra.
But I'm just really, you know, I actually even wonder if the BBC have deliberately cut this as a kind of like thing. They've got to cut money, so they're like, oh, let's just cancel Doctor Who Confidential to bring home to people that we are having to do cost cuttings.
Maybe.
Anyway, it just seems a bit unfair.
A Twitter campaign started up immediately. You can see it right there on the screen. @SaveDWC is the DWC Twitter campaign. So you can join that and follow at @SaveDWC and support them, retweet them if you're upset about this. It's it is a strange decision because I can't believe it really cost that much to actually produce it. We did actually get a tweet in from one of the producers.
Yeah.
Who tweeted @TalkingWho, and that's just from Matthew Andrews. I think I speak for the whole of the DWC office in that we are overwhelmed by the Twitter response, so thank you.
Well, the thing is, I think from the Doctor Who fans and everything, this has been going on since the start. Really,
indeed.
It was one of the start when Christopher Eccleston joined.
It was part
and it's we've had Doctor Who Confidential on like 6 years, and it was actually on Doctor Who Confidential that Matt Smith was announced as the new Doctor.
It was indeed, yes.
And I think I remember when I was watching. That must have got some good ratings. I remember when I was watching that, and I think the whole country made a collective gasp of who. But
I mean, I don't think that Doctor Who Confidential wasn't without its problems. I mean, I think we were discussing earlier. They do spend very repetitively time talking about stunts and special effects, which aren't that dissimilar to the previous week's ones, and not really spending enough time on really the world of Doctor Who, the history of Doctor Who.
Me and Elisar, being fans of how many years, we like to see classic Doctor Who
but
remembered
why not,
as well.
Why not put things into the context of its history? The God Complex. We talked about Doctor Who Confidential, not really even talking about the Naimon, or even there wasn't any clips of the Horns of Naimon or anything to link the God Complex to the Horns of Naimon.
I was reading actually this week that apparently they had to get a fan on the set of God Complex to explain to Matt how to pronounce Naimon.
Couldn't you just watch the DVD?
I just tell you, that's what I read.
Perhaps that's what they're wasting their money on.
Yeah.
So anyway, send us your comments in. We'll read them out. We're really interested to know whether you think it was a wrong decision for BBC to cut Doctor Who Confidential. Perhaps they should have just reformatted it, made it. Did they miss the opportunity? And really, maybe they could have just done a 20-minute version. Maybe 45 minutes is too long. You could have just done a 20-minute quick in and out. Let's talk about the interview. Let's talk about people. I think that To Entertain might be a bit happier there, because maybe that gives them an opportunity to start doing some really good DVD extras for the new series.
You want to know something? The DVD extras on classic Doctor Who are brilliant, and the DVD extras on new Doctor Who are basically just Doctor Who Confidential, which I've already seen.
We've already seen.
And so perhaps, some commentaries.
Perhaps they'll
we could really actually use some good commentaries on, some good documentaries and extras on the season DVDs.
Gallifrey Times agrees maybe they should have made it a bit shorter. Tom Grieve says, I love the first series of Confidential where they had the previous Doctors on talking about the show. Yeah, that was great. Gallifrey Times suggests maybe DWC could have online material. Maybe move the series online. Maybe it'll be cheaper that way. They don't have to. Like we said, it's only just a camera crew and a producer wandering around.
Doctor Who Ellis says that this series of Doctor Who Confidential has been the best yet, with many different features.
Well, the episode that accompanied the Doctor's wife was just the best episode of Doctor Who Confidential, probably since the first series of Doctor Who Confidential. But again, because it embraced the history.
Yeah.
So so keep those comments coming in. We love to read them, guys. We'll read them out. Okie dokie. So
moving on.
Let's we have a couple of tweets that were sent in earlier today as well. At Tom Grieve says, shame they are acting it. At its best, it was informative and educational. If they spent less on trips, it could be produced cheaper. At Jabba Moose says, they want to act Doctor Who Confidential. Have they completely lost their minds?
Well, who knows? But it's even like with Doctor Who Confidential going, the other news is that we're not going to have any Doctor Who on our screens after next week, aside from the Christmas special, until September next year.
September.
I mean, Doctor Who's not been cancelled; it's not going away. I think they're staggering the season between 2012 and 2013.
Indeed. So basically, what would have been 2012's series is essentially now 2012 and 2013.
So instead of getting a season in 2012, we are going to effectively lose a season.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
I'm wondering if we will get a second special. I can very much see over Easter weekend or something, the BBC popping something out, because I know it's a ratings winner.
Yeah, indeed. So, and we're still waiting for the other news that you were hoping to announce.
I can't.
But
I do not have permission.
Hopefully next week, guys.
I have confirmation.
We're delaying that announcement until next week.
You just look at starfuryco.co.uk. I'm going to announce it as soon as I'm allowed to. But it's done. It's agreed. Blah blah blah. Just waiting for permission. Very frustrating.
Indeed. So, closing time was this week's episode, and closing time there. We've got some lovely graphics from at Best Doctor Who, who's in the chat room as well, so you can say hello to him. Thanks very much. That's a great graphic there. Closing time. The Cybermen return.
At last. I don't know. I just really feel like the Cybermen haven't really had in New Who a fair crack of the whip. Don't know what other viewers feel, but I just feel like the Daleks have come back, and in New Doctor Who, the Daleks are firing on all cylinders. They're more deadly a menace than they've ever been. They've returned them to their roots, how they were in the black and white stories in the pre-Davros. It's like the Daleks who were in Evil of the Daleks or Power of the Daleks. Fantastic design. Every time the Daleks turn up, there's a new look to them. There's a new Dalek with them. The stories have always been great ones. The Cybermen, it's like, I just for such an iconic monster, you almost get the impression that the production team don't really like them.
They don't like them. Yeah, indeed.
They had their first story, which was a retelling of their origin, which totally contradicted everything from classic Doctor Who, but it was in an alternate universe.
Yes.
They retold their origin, and really the Cybermen didn't really turn up till the end of the story.
Yeah.
Then when they turn up at the end of the season, they turn up en masse, but it basically becomes a Dalek story. The Daleks totally take over. They kick 7 shades out the Cybermen, and it's Dalek Sec took over that whole story. They then turned up in a Christmas special about 2 years later, which wasn't too bad. Who was that girl from Ballykiss Angel? Who I loved that character.
Yeah.
But since then, they've just been reduced to like cameo appearances and just nothing with any real teeth or strength to it. It's been a bit disappointing. And the other thing that's really disappointed me is the Cybermen are back, and it's the same old design again. In classic Doctor Who, every time the Cybermen turned up, we got a new look to them.
I think this was the thing about this particular story is that we have Cybermen, which are, I guess, Monda Cybermen.
Yeah.
And they've crash landed on Earth. They've been stuck underground for centuries. Wasn't that a great opportunity to actually have a completely different look for these particular Cybermen? If these guys have actually had to make do with what they've done, find bits and pieces to enhance themselves, they should have been a bit more of a hodgepodge of Cybermen. They shouldn't just look like the alternative universe ones. These ones should have been the original Monda Cybermen, but somehow even more scarier looking, because they're just a patchwork, a collage.
Can somebody please explain to me why the Dalek design was perfectly fine? Why did they need to redo the Dalek design at the start of last season?
Yeah.
And yet, with the Cybermen, they're just sticking with this, this alternate universe.
Just sticking with it,
with their big C on the middle of their chest. And to be honest, what I know this would never happen. But actually, I would have thought for a story like this, it actually may have even made sense to have dug out a couple of the old Cybermen costumes from classic Doctor Who,
because
that would have fitted into
if these guys have been buried for hundreds of years, then surely they should have been an older looking Cyberman.
Yes.
Not the current ones. Very bizarre choice, I think. Anyway, we've got lots of activity in the chat room about this.
Yeah.
We have the Whovian Wars. The Cybermen were so underused. Jabba Moose. The Cybermen need a makeover. Best Doctor Who. They never got much play or story time in closing time, but I was told it was because we had to go on Matt's emotional journey.
Well, that's great. Then use a different monster or make it a two-part story.
Exactly. Why
I'm all
particularly the
for
Spider-Man
the Doctor's emotional journey, but I just really feel for an iconic monster who should be on the level of the Daleks of when they turn up. And I just don't feel this with the Cybermen.
I mean,
anymore.
We last see them in the Demon's Run story.
Yeah, Good Man Goes to War. And basically, Rory turns up. It was a ridiculous... I mean, look, the whole thing looked very effective at first. It was kind of ridiculous that Rory turns up and suddenly their entire fleet blows up. And as if they're going to give any information to the Doctor after he's blown their fleet up.
But this was a fleet that was supposed to control a huge squadron to the galaxy. You think, well, how? They're completely useless.
Yeah.
So, I don't see how these guys are actually warmongers. They just seem to be the most useless Cybermen ever in existence. It's just bizarre. But anyway, we'll be talking about other Cybermen later on. But we did have the return of the Cybermats.
Yeah.
Which probably haven't been seen since what?
Revenge of the Cybermen was the last time the Cybermats were used. And
when they almost
to be
killed
honest,
Sarah Jane?
Not particularly successful in Revenge of the Cybermen. So...
Well, they had killed an entire...
No, I'm talking about the look. They tried to make the Cybermats
look like a
snake thing, and it just kind of like didn't. Because I thought the animation it had somebody's arm inside, so it didn't really work out. Whereas the Cybermats previously they were introduced in I think it was Tomb of the Cybermen. They were introduced, and then they turned up again in the Wheel of Space.
Yeah.
So they're hugely iconic with the fans. The fans love the Cybermen.
We love Cybermen.
Yet they've only really appeared 3 times before this, and yet we wouldn't think so from the fans' response to them.
And I guess the pleasure of seeing them was that we were actually then linking to the older Cybermen.
Yes.
And I guess the idea of using these Cybermats was that they had been stuck here for hundreds of years.
Which
then goes back to then why didn't they have a completely different look?
I would much prefer they stick to the Cybermats and never bring back the Cyber Wraiths. That was like what was some kid in an Ewok costume with the toy Cyberman mask on. That was not good.
So your tweets, Doctor Who fan 82, closing time. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Best Cyber story of new series. Loved Amy and Rory's cameo. Stormageddon.
Mm-hmm. Now, DJ Kellykins says, I feel like closing time was excellent. Reminded me of the Russell T Davies days. I love those days.
At Stormageddon 24, I'm impressed we've already got a Stormageddon on Twitter. I think last night's Doctor Who was a funny and very enjoyable romp. James Corden was great yet again as Craig Owens.
And at a police box said, at Talking Who, truly superb. A brilliant episode for Matt Smith and James Corden. And that ending, absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so Cybermen aside, there's the actual story itself.
Yes.
We had the return of Craig Owens from The Lodger. You're not a fan of James. I like James Corden.
Who told him he was funny? His mum?
Well, he's an actor. He's not a comedian.
He just seems to be one of these people who's very flavour of the month with the BBC at the moment, and I don't understand why. I have to say he is a lot less annoying on Doctor Who than I've actually seen him in anything else, because he actually does seem to be trying to play a character as opposed to...
He is playing a character.
You know what I mean? He's not trying to be funny.
His James Corden personality takes over. But let's not forget he is an actor.
Yeah.
Both him and Matt Smith were in History Boys together, of course.
Yes.
And that was they toured around the world together. So they've got a long friendship for many, many years.
Yeah.
So you can see that there's a chemistry between them as well. The Doctor getting a job in a department store and actually having his badge, the Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure if most human resources would allow you to just be called the Doctor. But it was fun. We had a glimpse of Amy and Rory, of course, and Amy is, I guess, a model now. She's on a perfume advert.
Yes.
What do you do when you've been around the universe? You become a model?
That is one thing they kind of touched on it with Sarah Jane.
What do they do
But
afterwards?
after you've been on all those adventures and been around the galaxy, how can you be like one of these? I remember reading stories of the people who were secret agents during the Second World War, and after the war, and they came back to normal civilian life, they could not adjust.
Right. Yeah.
It's like when you've been through that kind of excitement and adventure, how do you adjust
have a normal
to
life?
Normal life?
Jabbermoose in a chat room says, "I was a bit bothered by the Amy bit."
So, do you honestly think Amy and Rory are going to be gone for long?
No, I'm sure we'll see them back.
I think this is going to be a whole Tegan
on
affair.
the wedding of River Song. I'm sure, but we know there's going to be several other familiar faces.
Yeah.
For those who obviously saw our interview with Simon Fisher-Becker many weeks ago, there was one or two hints.
Yeah.
He didn't specifically say, but he kind of left us with the impression that perhaps we may not have seen the last of him.
Yeah.
But we shall see. We shall see on Saturday. We have some more tweets that came to us regarding closing time. Deborah herself says, again, like the last two episodes, proper old-fashioned, high-value, funny sci-fi, absolutely thrilling. As a mum, loved Stormageddon.
Sloopy John 72 says, I liked the episode. It was fun, but still had a few creepy bits. The whole talking to the baby was not as annoying as I thought.
And Best Doctor Who tweeted, a lot about Craig and baby, very little time for Cybermen. Had the feeling the plot was rushed to fit it all in.
That's one of the problems you get with a lot of New Who.
Very much.
I feel a lot of the stories, I always feel it goes one way or the other. Very few stories I felt have been properly formatted to fit within that 44. And you didn't kind of get this kind of problem in Classic Who because you could always vary the amount of episodes, but you do seem to vary from episodes which are horribly rushed to cram everything into 42 minutes. But then there have been other episodes which have struggled to fill a 42-minute length.
Now, have you started seeing a theme here? Because Night Terrors, we had a father saving his child with love. The girl who waited, husband and wife, using love to conquer all.
Well, Let's Kill Hitler. When the Doctor's dying. Was that River Song?
River Song's moment of love.
And did the Doctor, when he whispered in his ear, was that him saying to her, tell River Song I love her?
God Complex, they had to show compassion for the Naimon in order for that resolution. Does anyone else start seeing this? Is this perhaps a clue to the wedding of Riversong. What the resolution might be, because we have this theme of love and bonds and.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see. This is actually the first season finale, which is just one episode.
Indeed.
Which actually, I've got to say, because there's an intimation that this is going to round off a lot of the Riversong story. It worries me with quite a few of the past Stephen Moffat stories where you're watching what you feel is 3 hours of plot rammed into 44 minutes. And for me, I don't know how other, say what you feel in the message boards, but I've become very, very unsatisfied with Stephen Moffat. And what I was saying about writers not being able to grasp the 44-minute, perfect examples of episodes which beautifully fit that format wonderfully would be Blink or The Girl in the Fireplace. Two of the greatest Doctor Who stories, new Who or old Who. Yet it seems to me, now he's story editor and producing the show, Stephen Moffat is having terrible problems with some of his episodes. That's my personal view, but what are they saying in the chat
DJ
rooms?
Kellykin says, I think the season finale will be rushed. Whovian War says, I don't mind Stephen Moffat timey-wimey scripts as long as he has enough time to fit it in.
Yeah.
Java Moose agrees that Girl in the Fireplace was one of her favourites. DJ Kellikins also says, thanks for pronouncing her name correctly. Yes, now... DJ Kellikins also says, better not be loved, that would be lame.
Barry Aldridge has put, I sometimes wonder if any of the classic writers could do well for the 45-minute episodes if that happened. There's a lot of Doctor Who classic stuff. Mostly for me around the Troughton Pertwee period. Any six-parter or anything like that. And we're going to get onto that with our next DVD review. But there's a lot of them where you're watching it and they're horribly padded.
Yes. No,
I mean, it got a lot better once it got to Tom Baker's period from season 12 onwards, when they kind of like jettisoned the six-parters and stuck more to four-part stories. That I've always felt that 90 minutes, because if the Doctor is landing in a new world, a new environment, meeting new monsters, like with the 4 25-minute episodes, you spend the first 25 minutes introducing this new environment the Doctor's landed in. And a lot of the episodes, like the first episode of The Ark in Space would be a good example, or the first episode of 4 to Doomsday, wouldn't feature anybody. It would just be the Doctor and his companions wandering around wherever they were, trying to explore and examine what this enlightenment. There's another example of the Doctor and his companions just were, and no other characters. Then you'd start introducing what the menace was, who the villain was, episode 2 and 3, building the story up and then concluding it in episode 4. I think in 44 minutes, trying to get all that in can sometimes be a little...
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think so. Ciplio says, my stomach turns with all these love references. Doctor Who Ella says, I think a one-parter doesn't work for a finale. One part is only like closing time and Night Terror's work.
I've got to say, though, I've enjoyed the one-parters a lot this season. I felt we've had some very, very good one-part stories.
Closing Time is an enjoyable story. I mean, taking out the sort of being frustrated by the whole Cybermen, if it'd been a different monster, it would have probably been better, actually.
Yes. But if you heard our comments earlier, it was mostly about what the hell's going wrong with the Cybermen at the moment. But I thought the last 2 episodes were especially very strong, and the Doctor's wife this season, we've had some very strong. Indeed. But this is, I think, for me, the first time I've gone through a season of Doctor Who, and the best stories haven't been by Stephen Moffat. In fact, the worst stories for me have been by Stephen Moffat.
Well, he has said that he hopes actually the next season will be more about the one episode.
I'm looking forward to that.
Stories, and not about these long arcs, which A, are overcomplicated, but B, it just means they have to shove references into other episodes. Like the Ganger 2-parter. They had to put in, the scene of Amy seeing Madame Kavoria.
Yes.
It's just like, well, why? It just breaks up the story. But going back to the classic series and the writing, when VHSs first appeared, we got to see 95-minute film edited versions of those stories, of which they haven't actually made those onto the DVDs. I really like those 95-minute movie cuts of classic stories, because they do work as movies. You know, you watch it, you stick it in, you just sit there for the whole 90 minutes. There's no breaks. You're not watching the same clip of the cliffhanger over and over again, because sometimes those catch-ups might be like 2 or 3 minutes long. And so we don't need to watch that, but then you see that they've actually come short in that particular episode, so they've made the catch-up even longer. But yeah, no, I sometimes get frustrated that they just don't include those 90-minute versions as a second DVD. Okay, so closing time. Final thoughts on closing time?
I thought it was a good episode. I mean, I don't think it was as strong as the previous 2 episodes, but I still enjoyed it.
The almost kiss. Doctor Who or not Doctor Who? It seemed like it just sort of got shoved in. You think, where is this going? And of course, we mentioned it earlier, the ending of love. You can actually beat becoming a Cyberman by just love. And then
let's see that on a Dalek.
And then you destroy the other Cyberman just by the same thoughts.
Yeah. Let you try that on a Dalek.
Yeah, James Corden, he's fun. I wouldn't mind if they just bring him back every now and then. Maybe give him a trip in the TARDIS. Wouldn't that be kind of fun to actually see him get completely wide-eyed with seeing the universe. Silvio says, some of the best stories are standalone. Not every series needs a gigantic story arc. Doctor Who Ella says, it feels like we need to know this long-running story every week with every reference. Standalone episodes work so much better as we get something new every week. I mean, that's the thing, if they'd had all these long arcs in classic series, they certainly wouldn't be able to release the DVDs in the order they do. It's just like put out a DVD. It doesn't matter what the order is. They have
actually done. They did do a couple of arcs. It wasn't until much later, and it was like
Tom Baker
season.
Really had the arcs.
Yeah, like season 16, Key to Time.
Yeah, the Key
Saga.
to Time.
That was a whole series, connected stories. There was the Space trilogy.
But they're really loose arcs.
Yes,
they're very loose arcs.
Yes.
They're not really arcs. They're just a way to tie things together.
There was Black Guardian trilogy,
and then of course the Trial of the Time Lord.
Oh God, that I think was the worst connecting of stories ever. I bought Trial of a Time Lord on DVD and I watched all the extras and that's it. I just couldn't face watching it.
Well, we'll review that next week.
Spilio says James Corden has said he is trying to be back in season 7.
So
sure
anyway,
he will be, actually.
We're going to be going on to a DVD. So start tweeting your thoughts about the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Do you think the Cybermen are just a joke monster now? And while you're thinking about what to reply to that, we're going to go to our DVD review.
Which we're staying within a Cybermen theme.
And it is. And again, we have some fantastic art from Best Doctor Who. It is The Invasion.
Invasion, a class. I think this is our first Troughton.
This is
DVD
our first
review.
Troughton review.
Not that there's actually many Troughton DVDs to review.
What a shame. What a shame. But anyway.
This story comes from Troughton's third year as the Doctor. And his final year. And this was one of his final stories.
It's 8 episodes.
8 episodes.
So spread over 2 discs, 4 episodes.
And this is probably one of the most interesting DVD releases because the vast majority of Patrick Troughton stories no longer exist on DVD. In fact, on TV, they just don't exist. The BBC
jumped. There's no tapes.
BBC in the 70s didn't think that there was any use for these episodes, thought that they were taking up too much space in the warehouse and started throwing episodes into skips and burning them. So lost, potentially forever. Some have been returned, but Invasion, only 6 of the 8 episodes exist. However, every episode they have sound recordings of. They have the sound of every episode of all the missing ones.
And that's because of fans, Doctor Who fans, actually recorded the sound on their tape recorder. We've got tape recorders in the 60s. And when they recorded, they would take their microphone, watch Doctor Who that week, stick the microphone in front of the TV and record the sound coming off the TV, because they didn't have videos back then. You couldn't record a TV show. All you could do was have a tape recorder and record the audio. And that was the closest thing to owning a VHS player back then, or a DVD. That's the closest thing. You'd only just got to listen to it back.
Yes.
And of course, it was a microphone. So if your mum was making the tea, or your dad was stomping because he got pissed off by something that day, you would have that on your recording.
Well, what they did is they took fan recordings of episode 1 and episode 4 of Invasion, the 2 missing episodes. Now, previously, Invasion had been released on video with Nicholas Courtney, just describing what would have happened in that. And to be honest, it wasn't particularly successful. It was it really did leave you with a sense of what the hell's going on here. But for this, what the BBC got was, it was actually originally done as a web project for the BBC's official website.
Right.
And they've taken the sound recordings and they got Cosgrove Hall. That's the animation company behind Scream the Sharker, Danger Mouse.
Danger Mouse, indeed.
Count Duckula, Phantom Cat, whole pile of classic British cartoons. And they animated those 2 missing episodes. So effective. And I've got to say, the animation is incredibly effective. It's flash animation.
I have to say, I absolutely agree. I mean, I was watching when you stick in the DVD and you watch episode 1, you think, this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant.
It's really quite seamless.
And it's like, well, I could watch more of these.
Yeah.
Could they just?
The thing though is, it's phenomenally expensive. It's expensive, and the BBC used budget from the website for it.
Right.
And so we got very lucky with it. And so far, To Entertain haven't been able to get this done again. This is a shame.
Until, of course, Reign of Terror, which they're currently working on right now.
But that's because they've got a fan animator to do it, who's obviously, judging by his Doctor Who anime that he put on YouTube, is an extremely talented animator. But with Cosgrove Hall doing the animation, that is the top animation house in the UK. So that's going to cost a bit.
It's going to cost a bit.
So what do you think about Invasion itself as a story?
The Invasion. I mean, it takes its time, but actually it doesn't matter that it takes its time, because it's actually very, very good. And the reason why it's good is not just because you have Patrick Troughton and Zoe and Jamie, who are great, great companions, I have to say. But you have Tobias Vaughan as the villain. And now
Kevin Stoney.
Who
had previously appeared in Doctor Who as Mavic Chen, the Guardian of the Universe in the Dalek Master Plan.
He gives a Bond villain performance. This was a Bond villain.
I've got to say, between Tobias Vaughan and Mavic Chen, I mean, really, those were just. It's just such a shame that before Roger Delgado, you could have actually had a real permanent nemesis for the Doctor in this. And he returned for one more appearance in Doctor Who in Revenge of the Cybermen.
Right, sure. We're showing you
leading the leader of, I'm trying to remember the character's name, of the Vogons, the not particularly nice Vogon, who's again another Cyberman story.
Yeah. No, it's a great performance. He plays this man who runs this company called International Electromatics, and he's done a deal with the Cybermen, where the Cybermen will invade the Earth, and as part of the deal, he will then become a powerful man. He'll get to control Britain or something like that. So he's done this deal, but of course he's not satisfied with that, and so he goes and starts wanting to create this machine using this kidnapped doctor, professor, that he will then use to control the Cybermen.
Yes, it forces emotions upon the Cybermen, and then that just leaves them in a catatonic state.
So they'll have to do what he says, otherwise he'll just destroy them.
Yeah.
So what a great villain. I mean, it's a human who thinks he can outdo the Cybermen.
And there was actually, it was almost the template for the John Pertwee stories here, both in the fact that you have an alien menace invading modern England with very known locations being used, with Unit and the Brigadier, and Tobias Vaughan is very much like the Master, and in some extent it's almost like a typical Master storyline where he's working with the alien menace, but by the end of the story ends up having to team up with the Doctor,
yes,
and help him defeat them.
Because it all gets out of control. And,
yes. Now, I have to say, though, now this story, it's one of those ones, and I think production-wise, it's one of the best-looking ones of the black and white era. Mm-hmm. There's aspects to it which actually look almost movie quality to it. It's got some wonderfully iconic moments, such as when the Cybermen are coming down St. Paul's Cathedral. That's just, there's that and the Daleks.
This is one of the most famous photos of the 1960s Doctor Who era. Yeah. I mean, this really is. It's become hugely iconic.
And there's a lot going on in the show. Interestingly enough, in the Pandoric Opens last season, the Cyberman spaceships were identical to the Cyberman spaceships in this story.
Right.
And also in A Good Man Goes to War.
Yeah.
I've got to say, though, at 8 episodes, I mean, really, there isn't plotline to stretch to 6, let alone 8. I mean, really, this is a 4-episode story.
I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't mind it. I didn't mind it being 8 episodes, and to me, that's really how good Patrick Troughton is as a Doctor. You know, as Zoe and Jamie as companions, and the villains in this. You know, because they're threatening. They are threatening.
Although the Cybermen are a fantastic villain in this, I just really feel that as a storyline, it would have worked a lot better as a 4-parter, or even as a 6. I think 6-parter, it was stretching it.
Jamie and Zoe get some help with this young photographer. They go on their own adventure. They start exploring underground. Everyone gets to do something.
Yeah.
And it's not too rushed. But I disagree. I think it works. I'm happy for it to be 8 episodes. You know, we don't have enough Patrick Troughton on DVD, so I'm thankful for 8 episodes of Patrick Troughton. Personally, I'd rather it been
a 6-episode story. I think the Cybermen should have been brought into it a bit earlier. But, you know, as I said, there's a lot going for it. You mentioned before about...
Yes, I think you say that the Cybermen should have been brought in earlier, but that's because we know it's a Cyberman story because we've got the DVD.
Here's a question, and I've always thought about this, and we should have asked this to Jerry Bentham the other week. Now, anybody my age from Doctor Who fandom will remember the story Earthshock. And at the end of episode 1 of Earthshock, the Cybermen are revealed, and nobody knew the Cybermen were coming back. And people just went ballistic. There was a kind of a bit of that at the end of season 2, when do you remember the name of the story? When the Daleks came back to fight the Cybermen, and we'd all guessed the Daleks were coming back, but it hadn't been confirmed. We all got that was a bit of a shock as well. But I've never really seen any reports. There was this, and also Frontier in Space, when the Daleks turned up at the end out of nowhere. And I wondered, you know, did the Radio Times give anything away? Or was it a genuine shock? With Doctor Who fans completely freaked out that 4 episodes into a story, suddenly the Cybermen turn up.
That's the thing.
Or 6 episodes into Frontier in Space, there's a Dalek.
It's building the story that Tobias Vaughan is the villain, and they're just keeping secret that the Cybermen are going to be revealed. You know, all you know is that he's talking to someone in his special room. You get an electronic voice, but that's because they're talking through space, so it could be anything. Barry Aldridge says, I thought the animations were going to fail, but it was brilliant in the end.
The animation is fantastic in this, and it's such a shame. It's actually a bit of a shame that that type of animation from Cosgrove Hall is just too expensive, because, you know, I'd love to have seen them do a couple of other ones. I do think you know, some of the more ones where there's so little remaining, it may have been a stretch. We're getting the Reign of Terror from the that Guide to the Doctor Who anime. There's a couple of other stories I would love to see them complete as well. Of course, it's a given, the 10th planet. the final William Hartnell story.
But there's also rumours of Shada.
Shada. Well, because that's the incomplete story.
Yeah.
But
they actually don't have any dialogue for those particular.
No, they'll have to call in Tom Baker and Lala Ward and keep them in different rooms. And the British actor Christopher Neve, who plays the bad guy in Shada, died recently. Very few. They'll have to get some voice impersonators in or something like that. Tom Baker and Lala Ward have to be in separate recording studios. But got the Ice Warriors. Episode 1, 2 and 3 of the Ice Warriors are missing. That's a fantastic story. That's one they could do some animated. And another episode story I like a lot is Moonbase. I'd love to see them animate episode 1 and 3.
Best Doctor Who says Moonbase was good too.
There's a 4-part story. Episode 2 and 4 remain of it. For me, I get the impression, I could be wrong, but having seen all of Tomb of the Cyberman, all of Invasion, seen the bits of Wheel in Space and Moonbase, I'm hedging a bet to think Moonbase would have been the best of the lot of them if it was still around today. We don't know, but we've got all of Tomb of the Cybermen, and through the wonders of animation, Invasion's being brought to us complete now. I was just going to say, as I said, I think at 8 parts, in my opinion, I think it's way too long. But I will say, Kevin Stoney as Tobias Vaughan, one of the best Doctor Who villains. I just wish we had the Dalek Master Plan complete to marvel at all his performance in that as well. Jamie and Zoe. I've got to say, in my opinion, Zoe comes in number 2 as the hottest Doctor Who companion after Karen Gillan.
Let's talk about, because we've obviously done our skirt watch on several episodes before. We talked about skirt watch when Amy had her mini skirt.
Yes.
We talked about skirt watch when Tegan in Kinder had her leather skirt.
No, it wasn't in Kinder. That was Frontios.
On Frontios. Yes. And then, of course, on Day of the Daleks, we had lots of short skirts from Jo. But Zoe may have possibly the smallest dress, shortest skirt of all of them ever in the Invasion.
Yeah.
And in fact, the cameraman lingers for a very long time on her arse as she climbs down into the sewers. She's coming down the ladder.
This is what DVD was made for, guys.
And the cameraman just says, yeah, I'll just do this shot. And the editor just says, we'll just stay on this shot, I quite like it.
Now, after she worked on Doctor Who and did other acting work, she actually moved from being an actress and she became an agent.
Did she? Wow.
And apparently, when David Tennant left drama school, he was ringing round agents looking for representation. And he called up and the agent went, "Hello, I'm Wendy Padbury." And David Tennant went, "It's Zoe!" And she put the phone down on him.
Oh dear. No, Wendy Padbury is awesome, and of course, by the end of it,
she's kind of interesting as well, actually, because we keep on hearing this stuff, and I brought this up before. It drove me nuts when you had Russell T Davies come on and say Rose Tyler was like the first companion who was an equal to the Doctor and all this kind of stuff.
Well,
you had Romana, especially Romana, played by Lala Ward, totally the Doctor's equal. You had Ace, a very strong character. You had Tegan, and I feel Zoe is very much. You really get the impression. I think Jamie, second only to Elizabeth Sladen, in chemistry between Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines, there is a genuine on-screen friendship with those two. And Zoe, one of the first companions they had, who was as scientifically brilliant as the Doctor.
Yes.
And could challenge him at times. And I felt this was a great companion setup. Definitely I think up until Elizabeth Sladen came on as Sarah Jane Smith with Tom Baker, not so much with John Pertwee, but with Tom Baker, they had a golden chemistry with each other, as did Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines. There's just something about the two of them together. They just spark off each other and just bring out better performance in each other.
So here's the animated versions again.
Yes.
And of course, we have
Scipio has just commented here. Russell T Davies did talk a lot of bollocks.
We have the first appearance as Lethbridge Stewart as the Brigadier.
As the Brigadier. He had actually previously appeared in the Web of Fear. Now, the Web of Fear
he's had a promotion.
Unit were not in the Web of Fear.
Right.
But what the idea is that after the Yeti invasion, and apparently there has been some other kind of like goings on and everything, Unit is formed. And this is the first Unit story. And whether Troughton, even if Troughton had stayed on, it was nothing to do with the regeneration. But there was already plans to move Doctor Who to present day working with Unit. And this was like to establish that.
Merlin McCarley wants to point out that Nyssa was no dummy either.
She was a bit of a wet... I mean, she was intelligent, but she was
boring. I think she was an attempt to try and do a Zoe, wasn't?
Oh, she was as wet as anything, and then her clothes would fall off.
Best Doctor Who says RTD was too lovey-dovey at times. Example, The Last Torchwood. And Barry Aldrich says Moonbase was good indeed. How do you know, Barry? You're younger than we are. I assume you've just listened to the CD. Do you want to confirm that?
Somebody's actually come in, and they're absolutely right. I apologise to this. James 147155 says Liz Shaw should not be forgotten.
And Barry Aldrich says what about Liz Shaw as well? She was obviously
Now John Pertwee actually says. Barry Letts says they got rid of Liz Shaw. They asked Caroline John to leave the show because they felt that she was too intelligent and the Doctor needed somebody who was stupid to basically ask him lots of questions. I actually disagree with that. I mean, I think it was proved with Zoe. It's been proved with other companions. You don't have to have...
The on-screen time between the Doctor and Romana is just terrific.
Yeah.
Because they can talk at the same level.
Actually, the thing I have to say I loved the most about Romana, and it was brilliantly, I feel, conveyed by Lala Ward, was I feel that she was giving the impression that Romana thinks she's cleverer than the Doctor, but is at the same time deliberately playing down because she doesn't want to hurt his ego.
I mean, Jamie always is presented as he's a bit slow. He's slow. He's a Highlander from a Highlander
from what the 17th century.
He sort of fits in.
Yeah.
Very well.
He's a Highlander from the 17th century.
He should be less intelligent than actually he's portrayed.
And he's seeing this stuff, so of course he's gonna be a bit slow on the uptake. But
he's not presented as dumb.
He's not stupid. There's a difference to being stupid and being uneducated or just not having experience.
I mean, in reality, his character would be uneducated compared to all that everyone he comes up with. But they don't play him that way, and probably that's the right decision, because otherwise it would probably just be a bit too silly. Every conversation.
So Spirio's just pointed out, and they found the stereotypical blonde idiot in Joe Grant. Yeah, I'd agree with that as well.
Yes.
We've had this argument before. I'm not much of a fan of Joe Grant.
She was a blah 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 1999 saying River is like a mix of Romana's 1 and 2. No
comment. I'll get into trouble.
And Sleepy John, Leela was a savage but also very clever. You know?
Well, that was the thing. Leela was the same thing in that.
Same as Jamie.
Leela, you put her in an environment, she knew nothing about it, but she would pick up things quickly because she wasn't stupid.
And what Jamie and Leela had as because their bravery.
Yes.
You know, they would not, because I guess they didn't necessarily know better. They could be brave because they wouldn't necessarily know they should be in fear. You know.
Whovian Wars has put that Jamie was a Highlander from Emmerdale Farm.
I suppose. What would you like to see in the next companion? Because are we going to just continue getting this sort of parade of sort of young 20-year-old women?
You want to know something? I found it very interesting. What I found really interesting is Rory. I think has been far more interesting than Amy has been. But I think Amy's been a great companion, but less because of the writing and more because I think Karen Gillan brings an awful lot to the character. I do feel, though, if you look at all the companions we've had so far, that they all, with the exception of Catherine Tate, they all seem to have fallen into the same kind of, girl in her 20s, very attractive, Will she have a romance with the Doctor or not?
Has daddy issues.
There's all things like that. Catherine Tate, actually, when I first heard Catherine Tate was going to do it, I thought, oh my God, is this going to be Bonnie Langford all over again? And it wasn't. And she was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Something hadn't been done ever before with a Doctor Who companion before. And I thought she was fantastic. And it would be nice to see a break from the tradition and get something new into whoever is the companion that takes over from Karen Gillan.
I mean, you know, you can understand the reasoning for the Rose character. If
yes. You're reintroducing the show. You needed a character who the audience could latch onto. The first episode was about Rose, and through Rose's eyes, you're introduced to the Doctor. And whatever you might say about Russell T Davies, it was genius the way he brought the show back for a new audience. And he was actually very astute. He was like, right, it's a new audience. We'll introduce the Doctor, reintroduce it through this companion in this way. A new audience will get it, but for the old audience, we'll have the Autons, we'll have the Nestine, so the old fans will still love what they're seeing, whereas the new fans, it's absolutely brilliant. But so what if people are saying in the chat rooms, what would you like to see for the new companion?
But now, I guess that the show's more established, we could have a sort of Zoe, Jamie, where you have slightly different characters, different time periods. Maybe they're from different planets, like Leela. Yeah. You know, we don't have to fall into that same. There has to be a 20-something-year-old from Earth in this current year, because the show's established. We know what the show is now. We know who the characters are. Let's break it up a bit. You know, let's see what. Let's hope. Let's hope. We do know that they're going to be coming back in some kind of capacity, although we're not quite sure what. Karen and
you know, something. Rory. I think those two are so popular with the fans. I would be surprised if they got rid of them, unless they wanted to leave themselves. But I would be very surprised. But you know,
so you think they might be coming back on a more permanent basis?
I'd be shocked if they're not back on a permanent. I'd be just completely shocked. You know, I just think this is all to do with the build-up for the final episode. And they always do like to do episodes each season which give the actors a bit of a break. So
Doctor Who 2012 would like to see a Romana-like character who's just as smart as the Doctor, someone not human.
Well, they kind of nearly could have had that with River Song.
With River Song, indeed, yeah. Whovian Wars. Rose was a horrible companion. She was too selfish, and I realised that that's what they did with Ace, but along the series, Ace changed into a more kind person, but Rose didn't.
Actually, I really started to get issues with Rose, not during the first season, but it was during the second season.
Her second season.
And it was when Mickey Smith came on the TARDIS, and she just seemed petulant and mean, and I don't know, some of that, you know.
Yeah, it was a very strange.
Do you know who I'd have absolutely loved? But, you know, I love that actress, Sophia Myles. I'd have loved to have seen Madame Pompadour with the Doctor as a companion.
Okay, so we were asking, are the Cybermen just a joke monster now? We've got some tweets. At Paul Bowler says, the Cybermen always get their heads blown up. Is this a Doctor Who tradition? I like Cybermats now. Cybermats are cool.
Oh, well, we've got the second Doctor, Graham Sheridan, and he's put, the Cybermen joke started with Russell T Davies, where he used them as Dalek target practice, but goes back to Revenge of the Cybermen. I'm actually going to disagree with that. I thought the Revenge of the Cybermen the Cybermen were pretty tough. We had this scene with two Cybermen standing in a canyon and an army of Vogons firing guns at them, and the Cybermen are just, the bullets are bouncing off them as they are just killing the Vogons like fish in a barrel.
Well, I mean, Barry Aldridge agreed as well. He said, I think they've turned into a joke since Revenge of the Cybermen. But I think what happened in Revenge of the Cybermen, of course, is what plagued them through the 80s.
Oh, it's gold.
Is they introduced the gold.
Yes, but in Revenge of the Cybermen, if a Cyberman attacked you, the absolute only way to kill them was gold. There was no other way to kill them.
Because guns were completely ineffective. They're completely bulletproof.
And with the gold, you actually had to get it in their breathing units.
Yes.
So it wasn't like Ace with a catapult that just, you know, catapults it somewhere in their direction, and suddenly they blow up because gold touched them. I have, and I'm one of those people. I know a lot of fans don't like it, but I really enjoyed Revenge of the Cybermen. And I think the Cybermen, for me, personally, I might get some knocks on me. That's my favourite Cyberman story.
Well, okay, interesting.
Now, Juanmo de Dios, I do hope I pronounce this properly, seems to be like it. By the way, the Doctor's explanation of the resolution was a jab directed at those Russell T Davies stories.
And Hashmark Hero says, Cybermen are only a threat if they sneak up on society. Direct combat, no contest. Well, you know, as we saw in... Was it? Yes. Yeah, when the one you said about Ace, where they just
you're still the nemesis.
Fire a golden arrow and they just die instantly.
Yeah.
Without...
Now, one thing I did like about when Russell T Davies teamed up the Daleks and the Cybermen that I absolutely loved was I think he got immediately the inherent difference between Daleks and Cybermen. And a lot of writers actually seem to get this wrong. And tweet me and put on the message board if you disagree with me, but Daleks are incredibly emotional beings.
Yes.
They have different emotions. They feel anger, xenophobia. They've got, and they're hugely arrogant and self-important, while they've got self-esteem issues. They hate everything. They get a joy from killing. Whereas Cybermen are completely emotionless. So and work on logic. So when the Cybermen see the Daleks, they go, "Oh, you have similar technology to us. Let's form an alliance." And the Daleks like, "No, we'll kill you." It's like, and that discussion between the Daleks and the Cybermen, I felt Russell T Davies absolutely got both monsters nail on the head.
Let's see. Blah blah blah. 1999. I don't think a male could work alone in modern Who as a companion.
It depends.
Actually, you know, going back to Cybermen, these Cybermen in Closing Time, they were buried deep into the in the earth, and what we saw obviously in Revenge of the Cybermen is that Cybermen can be quite flexible and they can sort of go in caves and things.
Yes.
But these particular
that was actually Earthshock. Oh no, Revenge of the Cybermen on the Vogue. Yes.
Yeah. But these particular Cybermen, you know, they walk around like this.
Yeah.
How the hell did he climb up that hole that goes to the changing room?
Yeah. Could you actually see these Cybermen marching down the
They
stairs?
can't bend down through the caves like they can with the old Cybermen when they're wearing their skin tight wetsuits. Oh dear, we've got some Adric conversation going right now in the chat room. Uvian War says, I think the only Doctor and companion really worked with the man was the fourth Doctor and Adric. As their brains could be a match for each other. But blah 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 1999 says Adric, controversial, lol. And Sleepy John says Adric was rubbish.
Now, if you watch Legopolis on DVD, Tom Baker, when Adric turns up, brings up the fact that he did a film, Canterbury Tales, with the director Pier Pablo Pasolini.
Yes.
Well, of course, did films like Salo, 120 Days of Sodom, and stuff like that. And as soon as Adric turns up, Tom Baker goes, "Oh, I did a film with Pier Pablo Pasolini, and he would have adored that boy."
Oh dear, poor kid, yes. Silvio says, there's a hilarious cartoon of Rose seeing all the other Doctor's female companions and bursting into tears, crying she thought she was the first one, and K9 being behind her there saying negative.
So, we've got the new episode coming up this weekend.
We do. Of course, we had a little teaser for it at the end of Closing Time. Madame Kavorian returns to find...
Did we think anything else would happen?
To find River Song, in the 52nd century library, doing her research on the Doctor. And, of course, the teasers with the trailers with River Song with the eye patch.
Well, everybody's got an eye patch. Did you see the original half-season trailer? Everybody's got a eye patch on them. And then there was the cover of the Radio Times. You see an eye patch. I'm going to turn up at a Doctor Who convention soon. It's not going to be fezzes all over the place. It's going to be eye patches all over the place.
Eye patches, yes. The cheapest cosplay you can do.
Yeah. Eye patch and a fez. You're done.
Best Doctor Who. Nothing for me beats Fraser and Pat. They read each other so well.
Okay, so next week, on next week's show, we're going to be reviewing the last episode of this season.
We'll have Sarah Jane Adventures as well to look
That's
at.
starting up as well. We're not going to review Frontier in Space next week because it'll only come out on DVD on Monday. And you use
Colony in Space.
Colony in Space.
Yes, indeed.
Colony in Space comes out on DVD on Monday. We'll review that the week after. So why not tweet us what story you would like to see us review on DVD? So we'll have a chat about one. So the last episode, we'll have a look at Sarah Jane Smith and the DVD that gets the most choices from you guys. So you got anything else to add there, Elisar?
No, but I just want to put that picture of the Cybermen.
Because that is like that and the Daleks over Tower Bridge. Those are just the most iconic images of Doctor Who.
The Invasion. Go out and buy the DVD. You know what? There aren't that many Patrick Troughton stories available. And certainly, this is definitely one worth buying, in my opinion. And you should have it in any collection. It's the history of the Cybermen as well. You know, it's not same with the Cybermen as well. There's also that one as well.
And join us. We'll be back next Wednesday,
Indeed.
8 p.m. No, 9 p.m.
9 p.m.
9 p.m. Those video guys at 8 p.m. Talking Who at 9 p.m. I may have some pretty exciting news for you that I've been waiting for a while to have permission to announce. But beyond that, I'm Sean Harry.
I'm Elisar Cabrera.
Thank you for joining us. We've been Talking Who. See you next week.